Let's cut across live to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who a short while ago had arrived in Brisbane this morning for the G20 summit. He's expected to address the Queensland University in a short while from now. Remember, a very much talked about visit of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He's being called the rockstar Prime Minister, if you will have that. He is expected to address a giant gathering at the Queensland University today. The Indian diaspora, of course, tracking his every move as he goes across Australia. It is a key agenda of the G20 summit is, of course, going to be black money. It's a widely debated topic here in India as well, and the Prime Minister, acutely aware of that, is going to be taking up that issue as India goes about seeking cooperation from multiple countries as far as its investigations into bringing back black money to India is concerned. That's a key agenda. A rockstar reception, we've been talking about it for the last 2 days now. Rahul Kaval has been bringing us all the updates from the Alphonse Arena, where Narendra Modi is going to be making an address to a massive gathering of Indians, and of course that is expected to give competition to what we saw happening at the Madison Square Garden. The Indian diaspora in Australia very excited about that, hoping that they can give stiff competition to the event that was organized by the Indian community in New York City. These are pictures of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I believe he is at the Queensland University, where he's expected to speak in a short while from now. It's a very anticipated visit, really, especially when it comes to boosting economic trade. He was dressed in a crisp white kurta pajama. We saw him earlier in the day as he left that aeroplane, and a massive reception for him was arranged at Brisbane Airport as well. He's also going to begin the bilateral visit to the Queensland University of Technology. The Prime Minister's visit to Australia has a strong business and commerce agenda. Modi is expected to also seek international support on the black money issue. He's likely to also voice his concern over the economic growth that doesn't generate employment. After the summit, Modi will be proceeding to Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne. In Sydney, a mega event has been planned by the Indian community. Prime Minister Modi will be attending a Madison Square Garden-like event at the Sydney Olympic Park. Close to 28,000 people are expected to attend the mega cultural extravaganza. A special train will run from Melbourne to Sydney, carrying over 200 passengers who will attend the public address. In the first trip to Australia by an Indian Prime Minister in as many as 28 years, Modi will engage with his counterpart Tony Abbott to boost trade, investment, energy and security partnership. We have Rahul Kaval joining us on the phone line. He's been getting us minute-by-minute update of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's movements across Australia. Rahul, it's over to you.
Well, the Prime Minister is at the Queensland Institute of Technology at this time, where he's focusing on using robotics in farming. There's an exhibition that's been put together by farmers, scientists, and they're looking very closely at how machine technology can be used in agriculture. That's the focus at this time. And after this, the Prime Minister goes to have an interaction with David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, and later he'll dine with Shinzo Abe, the Japanese Prime Minister, developing a very personal, very special bond with the Japanese Prime Minister, spending quality time with him. And then tomorrow, Avira, he has a whole series of bilaterals lined up on the back of the G20 with a whole bunch of world leaders who hasn't yet had an opportunity to spend quality time with. So there's Canada, there's Mexico, there's Germany, there's France, and the Prime Minister, the MEA, tells us, has been inundated by requests by world leaders, all of whom wanting to spend some quality time with the Prime Minister. And he's got a very hectic schedule. He's got cracking almost the moment he landed in Brisbane, and he's got a very busy 3 days ahead of him now.
Rahul, if you were to sum up the main focus of the Prime Minister's G20 visit, what would be it? We understand there are a lot of bilaterals lined up, but if you were to sum up what Modi's main agenda is going to be?
Well, the agenda is twofold in the way that I see it. On the one hand, an attempt to spend time with those leaders he hasn't yet had much of an opportunity to get to spend time with, because he's been to Japan, he's been to Bhutan, he's been to Nepal, but he hasn't spent much time with several prominent European leaders especially. To get to know them, nothing substantial and structured in the agenda, but just to get to know them, spend time with them, and these countries see Modi as a man of action, as a man they can do business with. There's a man who can get things moving in the world's biggest, fastest emerging economies, and they're excited to spend time with him. And on the other, you've got the agenda for the G20, where they're trying to put together a concrete action plan which will help achieve 2% extra GDP growth across the world, which could be $2 trillion roughly being pumped into the economy globally. That is the kind of ambitious goal that they've set for themselves. Now, the key question is really for the G20 to show that it is still relevant, because in the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, at that time, G20 leaders came together admirably and were able to put out a global stimuli package which helped the world stop itself from going over a financial abyss. Now, the key question is, can they do the same thing again? At a time when the crisis is not as strong as it was in 2008-2009, is the G20 still relevant as an institution which will help address the key global concerns? The G20 comprises the top developed economies of the world, the major developing economies, and the European Union. They don't face the kind of existential crisis that confronted these leaders in 2008-2009 in Washington, London, but can they build on those? And Prime Minister Modi, we are told, is focusing in a big way on black money. He wants the world to come together in a way that they're able to put together a concrete action plan to be able to to smash the security that black money enjoys in tax havens and to bring it back. That's going to be big on the Prime Minister's agenda. That's something that we're told he will be driving hard on. Now, it remains to be seen how much of that high rhetoric actually translates into action over there.
And what kind of a voice, Rahul, is India hoping to have in this economic dialogue, considering the world economy is in a precarious situation and India really is hoping to surge ahead?
Well, India comes into the G20 as a bit of a global villain, because the whole WTO round of talks and the global trade facilitation agreement actually got tripped over because of India's position on the food security issue, where India said that the cap of 10% which was being imposed was an unreasonable cap, and India wasn't prepared to go along with it. As a consequence, the entire Bali dialogue actually fell flat, and everybody was rather unhappy, given the fact that here's a Prime Minister who is pro-free trade, who is pro the global economy, wants trade to go up, and therefore for India to take an obstructionist stance to something which didn't go down very well. Now, here is something where, we saw Obama say it as well, that he congratulated Modi for trying to play the leadership role himself and trying to find a way out. I think one of the things the world is expecting from India is to see if Prime Minister Modi can help find a way out of the roadblock that India created on the global free trade facilitation agreement, and see if G20 can be an opportunity where India works with the world to find some way of meeting its concerns. This primarily is about food security. They want a 10% cap on expenditure, which essentially means that in India, in years where crops are expensive, it's possible that you might not be able to meet your statutory food security requirements under the new law, given the caps imposed by the free facilitation trade agreement. Now, that's the problem. And Modi cannot, because if he compromises, it will not go down well. The Congress will be up in arms saying that we've compromised with India's commitment to its poor people to give them the right to food. So that's a tricky area where Modi and Nirmala Sitharaman have been working the last several months to find a way out. And we're told that Modi has some solutions which he will be offering to present before the world leaders, because that's the one thing the world is expecting from India. And Modi's challenge will be on whether or not he can help the world find a solution, because India is the one that's holding up this process at this time.
Rahul, stay with us just to tell our viewers what they're looking at on their screens is Prime Minister Narendra Modi visiting the Queensland University of Technology. He is attending a presentation of the role of robotics in the field of agriculture as we speak. Rahul, taking off from what you were saying, there's been that perception change, hasn't there, from India being a mere a participatory, or rather just participating in the G20 summit, to a country that is being viewed as to play a leadership role going forward.
Okay, you're right. I think the kind of enthusiasm that is being seen around Prime Minister Modi is quite unprecedented. In any case, India is an important global power, given that, you have 1/6 of humanity that's being represented by whoever's leader of the country. But given the mandate that Modi had, that puts him at one higher pedestal than, say, the former Prime Minister Manmohan. People realize that here is a very popular leader who carries the will of his country, and it's a one-window clearance. If Modi says he can do it, he can then move the system within India to get things done. And in politics, you've seen how Obama has become a lame duck president over the past few months, and especially as he goes into the fag end of his presidency. And that is a big problem. It's not the country that you represent. It's not your name, your education qualifications. It's your ability to get things done. And in global geopolitics, a lot of importance is made on leaders who can move things within their system. And that is something that gives Prime Minister Modi a huge head start over anybody else who's represented India in recent years. And that is what makes all these world leaders so much more eager to try and spend some quality time with our Prime Minister.
Rahul, he's at the Queensland University of Technology. He's interacting with a lot of what I would believe are professors at the university. An Indian Prime Minister's visit to the country after 28 years, how does it become more crucial today more than ever?
A lot of top Indian industrialists are here. The Adanis of the world have invested hugely in the Carmichael mines. They're over here, given the natural resources that Australia has, given the demand in India for these natural resources. There's a lot of synergy that these countries can build on. And Australia is, a partner that India can move with very quickly because there are no contentious issues. Say, unlike China, where there's a border dispute, and even though there's a possibility for engagement, there's huge amounts of confrontation. There's huge amounts of issues of potential confrontation as well. With Australia, there are none. Here is a natural partner. They have the natural resources. India needs those natural resources. There is no conflict. There are shared interests such as cricket. It's an alliance. It's a relationship which hasn't been optimized adequately, and that is what both the Australian Prime Minister and Tony Abbott and the Indian Prime Minister are working towards. They've been spending time in the build-up to this big meeting. The Australian Prime Minister has gone out of his way to arrange a reception for Prime Minister Modi at the Melbourne cricket ground, where several top Australian cricket legends will be in attendance. So these are things that just show how much of an effort is being made also in Australia to go that extra mile, to try and ensure that they're able to push Indian-Australian ties, which haven't been doing too badly, but haven't been doing particularly well either, to the next level. And that's the effort that's being made. The Prime Minister will be addressing in Canberra a joint session of the Australian Parliament. That's a privilege as well. There's a huge amount of excitement in the Australian political community about the Prime Minister's speech at Sydney's Olympic Park Arena, where about 17,000 people will be there. We're told that several top Australian politicians will be there because the Indians are increasingly in Australia, as is the case in the US and the UK, beginning to form an important voice in local politics as well. So these people are going to be around listening to the Prime Minister, and given the fact that he's been able to rally the Indian community, cutting across geographical divides. Usually Indian communities abroad are divided into a Guju lobby, a Punjabi lobby, a Bengali lobby, a South Indian lobby. He's been able to get them all to work together, and that's what makes him an even more important voice, someone who represents the wishes, the aspirations of all of India, not just of one particular area of India.
Absolutely. Not just communities, Rahul. We've been hearing your conversations with a lot of the students also of Australia who are all for Modi. Once again, to remind our viewers, we are bringing you pictures coming to you live from the Queensland University of Technology, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting. He is being given a tour of the university and a presentation on the use of robotics in the field of agriculture. Rahul, you were talking about India-Australia relations that you said were not bad but hadn't really been moving forward. We understand that 5 MOUs are going to be signed in Prime Minister Modi's visit to Australia, but the groundwork really was perhaps laid for those MOUs and those understandings here in Delhi.
That is correct. When the Australian Prime Minister came to India recently, the one very interesting thing which I see, Aviral, which is, to my mind, Modi's biggest successes since the time he came into office have frankly been in foreign affairs. He's just taken to foreign affairs like a fish takes to water.
Right.
People would have thought that he's big on economics, he'll be able to push big reforms. He's been very careful on moving ahead with the reform agenda, but he's taken big, bold steps when it comes to foreign affairs. And this whole business of of looking east, not being obsessed with Pakistan, moving away from the hyphenation with Islamabad, engaging with China but not being overly paranoid about Beijing, but working constructively with the Japans of the world, with the Australias of the world, huge countries, big economies, where the conflict areas are not that much, where you really have nothing to be worried about, where the level of trust is much higher. That, I think, is Modi's key, because the United States is one country where everyone's trying to get tally with them, trying to work out the best equation. But it's countries like Japan, it's countries like Australia, where the greatest opportunity lies. And Modi, even though he's new to foreign affairs at the international level, has been very quick to understand that opportunity and jump on it. We will know more about the specifics of the 5 MOUs that are being signed at 9:30 p.m. Australia time, and Syed Akbaruddin, the Joint Secretary in the External Publicity Department, will be doing a press conference talking about what specifically on the bilateral agenda with all the world leaders that Modi will be meeting with, and also what specifically to expect in the MOUs that are being signed between the Indian Prime Minister and his Australian counterpart.
All right, that's Managing Editor TVT and Rahul Kaval. Thank you very much for that detailed perspective. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is at the Queensland University. He is expected, of course, to have a whirlwind tour of the G20 summit while in Australia.